You just got to have a positive attitude and push through it.
Yeah,
Right?
I think that's why it's so important that when you are building, we're building this physical machine that is the content machine, right? But the VP, our VP of marketing and our CMO of marketing are building this thing called the marketing machine, right?
Yeah.
And it's like making sure that you have people on your team who, operate under the hive mind, and they're innovators, and they're, if your performance is a high performance culture, then they're living into that, and they're bringing ideas, and they're plugged into trends. And it's like just making sure that the people that you're building with are the right people too.
What are some of the key differences between, from your experience building something for the company brand but then also your personal brand? Well, first of all, why are you doing that? Why not just do company stuff? Why are you trying to build a personal brand? Let's start there for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a great question, and you kind of just answered your own question with that statement, really, because it's really the why and the goal and the purpose behind each one. It's not always like just repurposing things that have done well, but if you feel really strongly that something has like a good message, or something in your instinct is saying like, I really feel like the world needs this message, it's figuring out how to say it in a different way and just continuing to play with it until you land on what it is. And then I'll rework it, and it does a little bit better, and then I'll rework it again. And the post that I would say has gone the most viral for me in all the content that I've ever, personally created, it had like 11,000 shares, over 100,000 engagements, and it was seen by like 7 million people on LinkedIn. And I think that's really hard to do on LinkedIn.
Big. Yeah.
I think that's a lot easier to do when somebody thinks about a reel. And if you're not on LinkedIn, it's just, I don't think people understand the magnitude of how hard it is to get a post to actually get that much engagement on LinkedIn.
Hi, I'm Matt Levenhagen, founder of Unified Web Design, Unified Plugins, and your host of the Builders Podcast. Here on the Builders, our goal is to uncover the first principles behind building businesses, products, and services. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe or follow wherever you're listening. And if you find value in our content, a like, share, or review is always appreciated. Let's dive in and explore the roots of innovation and progress together. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another The Builders. Today, we are joined by Mallory Glessner. Welcome to the show, Mallory.
Hey, excited to be here.
So Mallory is the manager of content and product marketing at Trainual.
Trainual,
I just learned it's train and manual together, smushed together. So that might, what do you guys do over there?
Yeah, so we started out as process documentation, and a lot of people will still tell you we're process and training documentation, but I think we're just so much more than that. We're onboarding now, we're responsibilities and delegation and role planning and all kinds of things. It's really just how you systematize and operationalize your business.
Nice. Yeah, systems are good, right?
Systems are everything. I think the great people and great businesses are built on systems.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Great people and great businesses are built on systems. Love it. Okay, so with that, so let's first get a little background. Let's see. So we're going to talk about to kind of give somebody just tuning in, kind of an idea where we're headed. You are responsible for content, building content today. You made a transition from operations to marketing. Let you talk about that a little bit, and kind of your personal spin on all that. And you, when we talked the first time, you were talking about this content machine that you built and how you grew like a pretty decent sized following with that. I think it was something, did you say like 8 to 10 to like 60,000 people?
Yeah,
followers?
So we had 24,000 when I started at Trainual, and in a little less than a year, we grew to 65,000. And then on my personal, just in a couple of months, I went from 2,000 to 13,000.
Oh, nice. So you're doing something right.
Something's working.
That's what we want to untangle today, because you're building something here. And I'm looking forward to this conversation myself, because like a lot of people in business, we care about content today, especially online, social media, and just creating content in general, because that helps us build our brands and do more. Get more exposure out there, and hopefully attract more business and all that. But yeah, let me hand it over to you a little bit. How did you land? Maybe kind of a little short journey story of like how you landed where you are today, so we kind of get an understanding of why you do what you do and what your personal angles are in that realm.
Yeah, I love that you said short, because I can go on like a real wild tangent with kind
Yes.
of how I ended up inside the content machine. But I started out 10 years in systems and operations as a continuous improvement director for a PEO firm. Very fulfilling work. We did a lot of incredible things, just building things constantly, and acquisitions and restructures and all kinds of stuff. And I just loved getting my hands dirty. But I brought Trainual into that organization to be able to systematize and really document what we were building so that we could keep building and keep scaling, and fell in love with the team and the leadership and the culture and just the product in general.
Nice.
And threw my name into that and said, hey, like, I want to work for your team. And the CMO and the VP of marketing said, great, well, we want you to transition to marketing if you come work for us. And I was, a little taken back by that. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I can't be a marketer. But
why did they think you could be? Like,
yeah. I'm getting to that. So they actually found me on LinkedIn. And so I was doing a lot in the early days to create content and build my personal brand out there on LinkedIn. And I think they saw something special there. And I was writing a lot about systematization and processes and just shouting out Trainual and why it matters and delegation and sharing, everything that I was experiencing with acquisitions and culture and you name it. I was writing content on it. So that's how they said, hey, I think you've got a knack for this. And also you're talking to the audience that we want to tap into with the operations, type of content that I was bringing to the table. And so I said, what the heck, let's do it. And so I joined the marketing team initially in the community to be able to connect with other operations leaders and people that are building their teams and building their businesses. But I think I kind of quickly outgrew, how small and niche that was, and wanted to get more involved in other areas of the marketing team and really help to build the marketing machine in general. And one area that I found that I was able to do that pretty naturally was content. And so that's when I really just took over our content approach. Now I cannot claim credit for the memes and the humor. Our CMO was really the one that said, hey guys, what do you think if we like switched our page over to humor? But I can say that I've had a big hand in the POVs, the creation of the copy and the content that I think will do really well, along with the people on my team and obviously some of the partners that we have. And so I've had a big hand in figuring out, how to create content that's not just funny and relatable and stops people in their tracks, when they're scrolling. We've definitely dug into that, but I said I want to make sure that we're not just a funny follow. We are actually solving problems for people through our content. So it's like, yeah, I laughed at that, but damn, I relate to that too. That's a pain point for me. And then they're curious about, well, hey, if they feel comfortable making fun of this or poking fun at this point or calling it out, I bet you they can help me to solve this problem. And lo and behold, they find themselves on the Trainual page. And it's like, yeah, we can help you solve your crappy onboarding. We can help you solve the fact that you have to repeat yourself 101 times for the same process. We can help you with all of those things, but we're able to make it humorous and relatable in our content, which is what helped us grow from that 24,000 to 65,000 so fast.
Wow. That's cool. That's a cool journey. So yeah, first of all, it's just to talk about the content itself and like things that are kind of resonating with me. We've been, as an agency, been trying to pump out content daily for like 4 years. And we've learned some lessons along the way, but one of the, and I have a personal brand site, kind of personal brand side of me, and then our company side. And, the thing that jumped out at me is the fact that you're not only trying to create something unique, with the humor and stuff, but you're not just trying to be humorous. There's that underlying, we're solving problems and we want people to relate to this content and say, like you said, and we do the same thing in the web design development area. You're like, this is your we know the problems you have. So we're going to talk about those problems and hopefully attract people that are looking for those. So that's a really cool angle to that. And I'm sure that's part of the success. So talk about the machine itself. Like, what are the components here? Like, now you kind of touched on some of the components. When you're building this machine, first of all, like when you came in, there was already something going on. What were the things that you kind of identified that you could improve on? Was it the fact that they weren't funny? Or what was the impact you had?
Yeah, so let me just start by saying this is a very loaded question because we were building the plane as we were flying it.
Yes.
Very much so. And there were also a lot of different people in the machine while it was being built. And it's like, well, who's responsible for this? Well, I don't know. This person sometimes does it and that person will occasionally jump in, but also our CMO sometimes, will feel the need to share something. And there was really no structure in terms of a calendar of when posts went out. There was no consistency. There was no real process. I don't even remember at the time if we were watching analytics too much. Like, I really don't think anybody said, hey, I own this thing. I will say that we were always pretty good since I've been there on the paid side. Yeah. But the organic side, I think, is where we fell flat and it really didn't have a machine around it. And so my goal was to build the content machine and the content redistribution machine for the organic side of things. Now, to do that, Trainual creates a ton of content. We've done amazing content with people like Gary Vee and Montel Jordan and Damon John and like all these other amazing people. And then we share about it that day or maybe that week. And then we never share about it, that same content again. And I said, what a waste of that investment. And so right now we're trying to figure out how do we go and share those again in a couple months and then the next year, and just making sure that as long as that content is still relevant, we're posting it as many times as possible. Obviously, you don't want to be like crazy repetitive. It's like, man, how many times are they going to post this? I've seen this 100 times in the last, couple weeks. You have to be really strategic about it. But if you're like, hey, once a quarter, I think we can probably reshare this really incredible piece of content that does well. And like being able to track how many times you've shared it. Has it maxed out? Because I think a piece of content will eventually reach that point where it's like maxed out and people are tired of seeing it. Yeah. But you're always going to be bringing new people into the funnel that haven't seen that content yet. And if it's good, some of the people that have already seen it are going to love seeing it again. So it's just knowing what does well and being able to repurpose things. And that's really where you start to build that redistribution machine. And that's what we're trying to figure out right now, is how do we get the most on our investment and the things that we're creating with all of these, incredible people, or even if it's something that we didn't spend a ton of time on. Like there's been times that I've seen a trending reel in my feed and I've said, hey guys, I think we should execute this reel, but here's the new angle that I want to use that relates to Trainual. And we've had some of those posts do 5 million hits, that have taken us, 5,000 new followers just from that one piece of content. It would be a shame to not share that piece of content again. Did we spend a whole bunch of time and money on it? No. So we probably have already reaped the investment, but it's still worth sharing those things again, like the pieces of content that do really well.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot to unpack. Well, first of all, so I'm going to get to the reusability of content because I think that's really cool. And something we try to do. We're not even on the level of you are. we're trying. we're like the little train that could. we're making progress. We do fine for our context. But the structure and the processes around things, and that I think, I mean, if before it was just like we don't really have a plan, like it makes sense that they had a plan for the ad side, but the organic side not. And they're just kind of randomly putting stuff out there and no one's really in charge and all that. I think you have to have that foundation and be able to schedule things and have a process around that. And I imagine that's a daily, you got so many that you want to put out every day and so on and so forth. And, who's doing that and who's reviewing the content, who's creating the content. So it's kind of this whole team coming together to do all those things, all those pieces. So that's cool. The thing that really, so you mentioned Gary and Gary V. I got a frog in my throat today. Gary V, who's not a fan of Gary V, but he recycles content all the time. And you're just always happy to see it because that's Gary just saying it a different way. But that's part of it. Oh, you say it different ways, a little nuance, a little different graphic, and maybe one of those times, I think he talks about this, one of those times it's going to, that's the message that somebody needed to say, to hear at that moment, in that way. And, like with just my little example with the podcast, one of the things I try to do uniquely is I want to think about a podcast episode as evergreen, right? I'd find ways to make it more to last. So we, over the 4 years we've been doing this, what we try to do, we have the main episode. Now this is all about process, right? We have a system. So by Monday morning, my VA has everything she needs. She has the content. She's ready she'll create the graphics for me and do all that stuff and distribute it. But we're going to post a full episode everywhere. And then the second day, we're going to have a clip. She'll pull some clip out of there. She's amazing at doing that. That's going to go to the second day. And then we will, if there's a good quote graphic, we'll create, if you say something amazing today, she'll quote you. And then there'll be a quote graphic. We got a template for that. That'll show up at some point. But then we also, like you said, I think about this a lot because especially after a couple hundred episodes, it's like, my gosh, there's so much stuff in our archive, so many amazing conversations we've had. Let's not let all those die. There's especially those really golden nuggets that came out of that. So we have something we introduced called kind of the rewind, and all it is an audio though. It's not graphic. It's just a little different. So when somebody sees it, this is something they're going back to, to listen to some past episode clip or whatever. But I think that's like what you're doing. I think you're over time, you're building this library of content and, even if my VA takes a day off and I'm in charge of it for one day, something happens, somebody's sick or something, I can go back to our archive and I didn't have any content for that day and take something we did and just recycle it, maybe put a different graphic, just do it a different way, a different post. But all that stuff, that's gold that you're creating. And then the other piece of this, as you're talking about, is the analytics and knowing what does well. And you're always trying to figure that out. But yeah, so I love what you're saying. So you can tell I get excited about this too. Because one day I'd like to be the Gary V of web design. So might be another 5 years, but we're working on it.
Yeah, and sometimes a post tanks too, right? And you're like, man, but I feel so passionate about that message. Right. And something in your instinct, sometimes I say content and anything in life really is instinct and intuition. And I've had ones where I said, you know what, I really love this message. Let me try to rework it. And then I'll rework it and it does a little bit better. And then I'll rework it again. And the post that I would say has gone the most viral for me in all the content that I've ever, personally created. It had 11,000 shares, over 100,000 engagements, and it was seen by 7 million people on LinkedIn. And I think that's really hard to do on LinkedIn. Big. Yeah. I think that's a lot easier to do when somebody thinks about a reel. And if you're not on LinkedIn, it's just, I don't think people understand the magnitude of how hard it is to get a post to actually get that much engagement on LinkedIn. But that was one where I second guessed myself because I was like, man, I've written this message a couple of times and it didn't really land. And I'm reading it and I'm like, am I sharing too much? Because, you don't want LinkedIn to be Facebook is like the whole thing, right? And I'm like, maybe I'm oversharing a little bit here. Are people going to take this message the wrong way? And I remember thinking to myself, you and I just talked about this before we hopped on too, like telling myself, stop overthinking it. Just do it. And so I felt really good about the quality of it and I hit post and then I came back to it like an hour later and it was at like 4,000 and I had a couple DMs saying like, hey, I think this is like gonna really take off. It's like it's climbing. And then a couple more days had gone by and our CEO reached out to me and he said, man, this thing is like, it's still going. It was, at like maybe 50,000. And then my boss, gosh, I love her. She reached out and she said, me and my husband were talking about it and it's a movement at this point. You're at like 100,000. She's like, I wouldn't be surprised if this like got picked up as like, an article or something. And, it was crazy because I had written similar content to that before that hadn't done well. And it's like, I just sat with the message and kept reworking it, kept adding things that I had learned to it and kept trying to figure out the right way to say it. And I say this too, like a lot of times I write to myself or my future self and like thinking about what kind of message I would want to hear or be proud to come back and read. And so I feel like I tried to do that and then I just let it fly. And that's kind of what happened with it too. So it's not always like just repurposing things that have done well, but if you feel really strongly that something has like a good message, or something in your instinct is saying like, I really feel like the world needs this message. It's figuring out how to say it in a different way and just continuing to play with it until you land on what it is.
That's interesting. That's an interesting perspective on that. Yeah. Cause there's so many things sometimes you just think you blame it on LinkedIn. It's like, they're just having they're just ignoring me today. They got too much content.
Been there.
Cause there's like some days there's like no activity. It's like, there's nothing wrong with my content today. It's nothing different than we did yesterday, right?
I do still feel like sometimes that's part of it because I've shared the same exact message on different days and I've had it do drastically different results. So I do think that's still part of it. But a lot of times it's just that we could work on our messaging.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things at play. Just like the Google algorithm, there's a lot of different variables that go into how your content's going to do. Part of that is the engagement. And it's kind of like the snowball effect, right? I'm again on a smaller level. I've never had a viral piece of content like you, but I imagine that's kind of how it is, though. Is the more people that see it, the more people that engage with it, the more traction it gets, the more exposure they give it. And then that gets more, and it just kind of snowballs like that. Mm-hmm. Is that how you feel like kind of it works? Like, excuse the interruption, but I'd like to take a quick moment to thank the sponsors of the Builders Podcast, Unified Web Design and Unified Plugins. At Unified Web Design, we specialize in crafting custom websites and providing comprehensive design and development solutions to help businesses build a strong online presence. Unified Plugins offers a suite of WordPress tools designed to help you create beautiful websites, enhance functionality, and drive conversions. Explore how these services can elevate your digital projects by visiting unifiedwebdesign.com and unifiedplugins.com. Now back to our program.
Yeah, and it also depends on the timing too, like how close together those engagements are, how close together those comments are. So if things are happening like at the same time,
oh right, yeah,
that will work in your favor too.
Interesting. Yeah. So what do you think are somebody's okay? So we got the components, right? You build an amazing team to do this for you. You schedule things, you think deeply about it, what problems you're solving in your particular space. So we talked about a little bit of the mechanics here, scheduling it, like you want to post stuff daily. There's this, let's talk about this for a second. So there's this, and this may be us getting in our own heads, right? And I've been doing marketing for a long, long time. And there have been a number of situations where I've thought I would never do something like that, or I wouldn't want to see it this way. But then you test it and it's completely opposite. It just rocks, rock and rolls. It does really well. I can, pop up's one of the, examples I use a lot. It's anyone listening to this podcast, I've talked about this pop-up experience. Like, I was totally against them until I used them. But the number per day, we generally just do like 3 or 4 on each of our platforms per day. We're 3 or 4 pieces of content is our average. Is there a sweet spot there? Is there at some point where you're spamming people too much, or are you're like, that's too much? Maybe just 1 content piece a day would be fine. It's just got to be really good.
I think this is where Gary Vee and I tend to differ, because I think he's like, you should do several pieces of content a day, and there's typos, and if there's mistakes, or if you're not really sure about the messaging,
it's like don't care, just put it out there.
He's a quantity guy, and I've never found success with that ever. Just personally, I have always found more success with really being intentional on my personal brand about quality over quantity. I won't post for a couple of days if I feel like I don't have the right message, or I don't have the time to dedicate to a quality piece of content. There are people that say, hey, being inconsistent on LinkedIn is hurting you in the long run. But I went just not that long ago, 8 days without sharing something, and then shared something and still had it do 100+ engagements. Is that a lot? No, but it should technically not be.
That would be a great day for me.
But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's, is it a lot? No, but I still was able to take 8 days off, stick to what I feel is the right thing for my style, and put out a quality piece of content and have it still do well. So I do think that maybe there's something to consistency with the algorithms on these social platforms, but I really genuinely think quality is more important. And also your reputation, your brand awareness, all of those things matter too. If you're putting out just quantity over quality, I think you kind of lose some credibility there too. And I will say too, with the content that we share on Instagram versus LinkedIn. So Instagram, we share 2 reels or a reel and a meme a day. So it's 1 post in the morning, 1 post in the afternoon, making sure that those are really quality and giving them as much time as possible to perform, really well before we launch the next piece of content. And so we have consistency there on our company page, but on my personal brand, I lean way into the quality side. So it's maybe I post every other day if I have the time that week, or maybe I only post 1 time that week. I probably wouldn't do that ever for a company. I think consistency is more important on company pages. So 2 different kind of conversations and avenues we could go in terms of what I would recommend for your personal brand versus what I would recommend for your company. But leaning back over into the company side, like I said, we do 1 post in the morning, 1 post in the afternoon. I think anything more than that, unless you have 100+, 200+,000 followers on your company page, I think you're wasting time, wasting content, and you're not giving it enough time to actually perform well. So I think either 1 time if you maybe have less than 10,000 followers, or if you're kind of over that threshold, 2 times, once in the morning and once in the afternoon is pretty much the sweet spot in terms of time. But then I notice different types of content do better on different platforms. Whenever we share funny quotes or tweets or things like that, they tend to do better on LinkedIn. But if we bring that same content over to Instagram, people are like, yeah, I don't care about that. Just give me the reel, give me the meme, whatever. And then I've tried to share memes on my personal brand page, and people are like, no, I just, I want to see the quotes. I want to see the pictures, and that stuff does better. To this day, quotes on a plain background do better for me on LinkedIn than anything else. I don't get it. But it's just, that's just the cold hard truth.
Yeah, no. And that's something I think, and I don't think this is something that we pay enough attention to. Every platform is different. and what you do on LinkedIn, even if it's the same piece of content, you might do it a different way. Like we talked about, like you just spin it a different way or create it differently. Yeah, we don't do enough of that. But yeah, these are all really excellent tips and insights into what you're doing. So and it's different. Like if you have, so those two or three, like for us, three maybe, pieces of content a day, are they different, or are they, because again, I'll kind of give you some insights into what we're doing. In a way I thought about it, like I like to inspire people. I like to inspire entrepreneurs, the podcast, other content, and quotes. So like every Monday we try to do, have that inspiring Monday, here we go, another week. And that doesn't even serve my brand that much. It's just something I want to put out there. I want to put positive energy into the world, and it's some positive thing. I don't even care how it does, and some of it's maybe I wrote it and it pumps me up. But then we have, the more intentional stuff. Like I did a blog post. I'm going to link to, do a social post on that, the podcast stuff. But we're mixing it up throughout the week. We're having, every day we kind of have a theme. And if anybody, you could probably figure that theme out if you, Monday through Friday, like what are they doing on Monday? Oh, we're going to see the full episode of the podcast this day. Or we're going to see, this other thing on Thursday that, maybe it's a rewind on a Thursday. Or Friday, you're going to see the teaser for Monday. You're going to, we have that just like you, and which is kind of underlying in the machine you've created, in the team you've created, that in this, you have this all scheduled and planned. That's a key part of this, right? It's yes, it's probably how much you're posting every day, but also knowing and kind of mixing it up and making it interesting. And I don't know where I'm going with that, but what are your thoughts?
I think I'm following. So, I mean, on Instagram and on LinkedIn, our strategies are really similar right now. Just sharing reels and memes, and reels never really do super well on LinkedIn. Obviously it's not in the past been a video forward platform, but I think it is becoming that way, even with like the little, the new scroll feed that they have. I think we're going to see videos kind of resurface in a big way on LinkedIn. But for now, a lot of our memes do really well. We'll share welcoming new hires to the team, and those always do really well. Just that kind of stuff. And then on Instagram, we've done reels and memes, and usually we'll rotate back and forth. I notice if we do too many reels in a row, they'll start to kind of trail off. So we try to do like, I wouldn't say we do real meme, but we definitely mix it up where it's like, oh, we just did 2 reels or we've done 3, like let's do a couple memes or whatever. One of the people that works on my team as a contractor, super knowledgeable, and he always says memes are like still images feed your following. So like the 65,000 people, and your reels are going to pull in new people into your audience. It's a great way to look at it. And so the still images will get a lot of engagement because they're going to be people who already follow you. They're already bought in, and they'll see those in the feed. Whereas reels, it just takes that one to kind of like catch on with people who don't really know you and you haven't built that cred with yet. But again, we've had some of those really, really take off. I would say we have a couple a month go viral that, pulls in new people. And so I think the strategy is different on, like we talked about earlier, on each platform. And like you said, you didn't have an exact question, but hopefully that kind of gives
just throwing it out there.
some insight into to how we operate. But the other thing I wanted to say too is that we really, when this started to work well for us, we hit it hard. And we just were like, meme, reel, like our channel, we have a Trainual social channel in Slack where everybody kind of just shares ideas and links, like things that are trending. And
cool.
we were sharing 20 and 30, every day. We were so excited when we really saw that traffic take off. And I would say we started sharing a little bit less, in the channel. I mean, we're all still really excited about it, but once we hit around, I would say like that 62 mark, we started to grow a lot more slowly. And I had this sort of moment to myself where I said, okay, Like we just climbed a huge mountain from 24 that we were stuck at for years to 65,000 in a very short period of time. But now our growth has been a lot slower. And so you realize what got us up this mountain is probably not going to get us up that mountain. And so what do we have to do differently now in the next year to get from 65 to where we want to be of that like 100,000 milestone, right? And so we started creating, the folks on my team started creating a lot of organic content, or we would jump on Zoom and do some of those like funny office meeting, things on Zoom. And we're trying to experiment more with organic content, and we're trying to experiment more with bringing like pop culture into our edited, podcast content, because we've realized that podcast content doesn't do well for our audience. It's like, how can we bring in the funny parts and pop culture?
Oh, cool.
Funny moment. I was talking to I don't know if you know Ezra Firestone, but I was talking to him
actually. Yeah.
Backstage at Playbook, and he's going to be on one of our episodes of Inside the Process. And he was just going on about how he's like the wig king, right? Like e-commerce. He started in wigs, and he was like the Elvis wig and the Afro wig and the clown wig and the mullet wig. He's like, I'm the wig guy. And he like went on this whole thing about wigs. And it was so funny to me in my mind. He was just a hoot. And I said, guys, I have this idea for pop culture that I want to try, and it has to be with Ezra's Reel. And I don't know if you're like into the Lord of the Rings or watched like the Elijah interview with one of his co-stars who was like interviewing him. But most people, I think, have at least seen this clip where he goes, have you worn wigs? Will you wear wigs? And he just like keeps asking him all these these questions about wigs.
I missed this one.
For like, it goes on forever. It's so awkward. Yeah. They're both trying to be really serious, and he just keeps asking him questions about wigs until Elijah cracks, right? And then they both start laughing. You're watching the reel, right? Yeah. And we're the audience, we're laughing. And I said, okay, when Ezra talks about the wigs, you gotta pull in this clip and have it flash to the wig conversation. That's how I want to bring in pop culture. That's the first one I want to do.
Nice.
But yeah, it's just like, how can we bring in some of this like quick hitting, funny entertainment, relatable people, pop culture moments into the podcast stuff that we're doing and get people interested. We call it edutainment, right? Like, how can we educate people but also entertain them at the same time? And so that whole ramble brought full circle here is that now we're trying to experiment and diversify with different types of content to really get us to that next milestone that we want to achieve.
Oh, gosh, so much good stuff here. You can ramble all you want. I'm just sit back and soak it all up. So first of all, when you're talking about reaching those plateaus. And I think I thought back to, when TikTok first became a thing, I was actually on TikTok. And a lot of people made fun of me, and it was the early days. So people were like, what are you doing? And I was leaning heavy into the humor side of it, doing lip syncing and all that fun stuff. I only built like a following of like 5,000 people or something like that. And then I decided to pivot to podcasting, and I left that part of me behind and hidden in private.
I'm going to go find you now.
I don't go to TikTok too often now, but for a while I had a whole idea around that when I was getting started with my agency. But I got to, you get to know people, and there was this, I don't remember her name. It's been a while since I've been there, but I just remember that she was building with me. We were all building. It was new, it was fresh, and she was doing pretty good and probably at the same pace as I was, but then she kind of took off a little bit. And I remember, again, not huge numbers, but she got up to like 25,000, 26,000 followers, and her content was more, she was like a teacher, and she was like a gymnast kind of thing. And she was doing the funny stuff too. But then also, a variety of content. But I remember hadn't left for a while, and I came back and I just checked in with, how you doing? Or she saw me or something. And she's like, she was talking about how she plateaued. She's like, I was doing really well. I got to this 26 number and I can't get beyond it. And it's been that way for a while. And so that when you said that, I'm like, oh, I bet that must be a thing. and I start to think about my stuff. Like, we've plateaued for quite a while. Maybe we should start mixing it up. And that leads into what you were kind of talking about is, I think part of this game is, you will never have it completely figured out. You'll make some progress, but it's all about understanding, analytics, understanding what's doing well, what's not doing well, and knowing your numbers and knowing when you're plateauing, but then always mixing it up. I bet part of that machine is the creative part, where we need fresh ideas. We need to meet. We need to have an open kind of platform for everybody to inject their ideas and come up with new ideas. What's going on in the culture, and how can we implement that? All the things you're doing. I mean, I talk about it all day. I'm going to throw it back to you, but it really resonated. I'm like, yeah. I mean, I bet that's you can have the machine set up and you can have the team, but there's going to be those moments where you feel like your wheels are spinning, and you just got to have a positive attitude and push through it.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's why it's so important that when you are building, we're building this physical machine that is the content machine, right? But the VP, our VP of marketing and our CMO of marketing are building this thing called the marketing machine, right?
Yeah.
And it's like making sure that you have people on your team who, operate under the hive mind, and they're innovators, and they're, if your performance is a high performance culture, then they're living into that, and they're bringing ideas, and they're plugged into trends. And it's like just making sure that the people that you're building with are the right people too. Right.
Got the right people on the bus. So, and that's another thing too. Like, I think about, just posting quotes or just posting podcast stuff, but I feel like your content, you're infusing it with like what's going on and fun and memes. And I love memes. If you go to my Facebook, I'm always posting memes, but I'm not on my brand pages or even my personal brand stuff outside of that publicly. I'm like, but I love memes. Maybe I need to be doing more of that. So this has been great. Let's land on this. So we touched on the personal brand versus company brand or brand. Yeah. And the efforts there. What are some of the key differences between, from your experience building something for the company brand but then also your personal brand? Well, first of all, why are you doing that? Why not just do company stuff? Why are you trying to build a personal brand? Let's start there for a minute.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and you kind of just answered your own question with that statement, really, because it's really the why and the goal and the purpose behind each one. And obviously, the company is going to have very specific targets that we're all very familiar with, making sure that we've got leads coming into the funnel, and creating brand awareness, and building brand reputation, and creating raving fans, and like all of these things that we want to do for the company that ultimately lead us to whatever big target those are wrapped under, whether it be new revenue or, growing the company to a certain size, whatever that, OKR is, right? Like all of those things are kind of under there. And your team kind of works around those. Their goals are set around those. We have like what we call an ICP. Most people are familiar with that term. And so we're kind of rallied around that. Like for the company, the team is really rallied around all these really specific things. And so for your personal brand, obviously none of that really comes into play. I think it did in a sense, in terms of it landed me at Trainual, right?
Oh,
so
right. Yeah.
I got that out of it. But now I'm really happy at Trainual, and I see a future at Trainual. And so it's like, okay, well, are you building your brand for your next role then? Probably not. Maybe, there's a case where we all, never know what tomorrow's going to bring, and
Right.
I need my personal brand for
Right.
my next role. But I wouldn't say that's like a huge motivator right now. And so I I ask myself a lot, and I think that's sometimes why my content is rather inconsistent. I'm not looking to start a business right now. I'm not looking to like venture out on my own. A lot of people start personal brands because they want to become solopreneurs or entrepreneurs, or start side hustles. I think I might be open to like starting a side hustle in the future. But ultimately, when it comes to my personal brand, kind of what I've resolved in my mind right now, and I've actually written content on this before, is that I'm just writing to a future version of myself. And I like looking back on my content and seeing my growth. And I love reiterating on a post with all the new things I've learned since I've written it. And I love seeing that content perform even better because now I'm even more experienced in that topic and I can relate to more people in a different way. And so a lot of the reasons that I write now on my personal brand are for my own growth and just because that's how I'm wired as a person. And I think if one person can relate to it, then great. But even if it's just me, which you said earlier, even if it's just me and it gets me pumped up that day, it makes me feel good about my growth and it makes me feel, accomplished and like I put something good into the world, like that's okay for me too right now. I don't have any kind of big aspirations for my personal brand, but that could change at any time, right? And I'll be glad that I've been doing it for so long, and I'll be glad that that muscle is there. I do jujitsu competitively, and people go, why? And I'm like, I don't walk around the streets going, yeah, fight me, right? Like I'm not always ready for a fight, and that doesn't ever cross my mind. I don't do it because like I need to like go out and be a warrior, right? But if that day ever randomly came, I'm going to be glad that I do what I do. And I'm going to be glad that I know some form of self-defense. Sometimes it's just being okay with the fact that you're building a muscle that you feel passionate about and that brings you joy. And I think that's okay too.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I think that's got to be the best way to do it. Like you're doing, because you're established, you like you said, you're happy with where you are and everything, but you're doing this personal brand thing and you don't have to worry about monetizing it or, how much engagement you get, all that stuff, but you're doing it out of what you care about and maybe giving back to the world. Like I said, kind of documenting your journey, and being able to, it is fun to go back and see what you said like a year ago or 3 years ago and what you were doing and how you've changed. And, but this also gives you a kind of a channel to kind of express those lessons you've learned and picked up over time and how your mind's changed and improved and hopefully it helps somebody out there. But yeah, I think that answers, I mean, that's a good difference between a company. The company is very focused on, we got a good reason we're doing this. We have goals, whatever that company's goals are. But for a personal side, and then, just kind of figuring out, maybe you'll use it someday and exercising that muscle. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll leave it at that. But, so tell us, first of all, let's land on this. Trainual. So if somebody wants to get, kind of learn more about what you guys do, like, what's the best way for them to kind of, go into that, come into your world? Is that in social media? It sounds like social media is a really fun place to be hanging out with you guys. You got a website?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I would say trainual.com, but given the context of our conversation, like, come see what we're all about on socials. Find us on LinkedIn. Yeah. We're Trainual on LinkedIn. We're at Trainual on Instagram. We're even out there sharing YouTube shorts if you're a YouTube person, but just come see what we're all about. I think, like I've shared earlier in this conversation, I think there's a lot of stuff out there that people can relate to, and hopefully we make you laugh and maybe we strike a nerve and you check Trainual out and see how we can help. Nice.
And one of the cool things there too, it's just like, I think about it, the old saying where it's not, don't necessarily listen to what somebody's telling you. It's like, watch what they're doing and why they're doing it. And I might be watching you guys. I might check in, see what you guys are up to. What can we learn from you in the wild? Well, thanks, Mallory. Appreciate you sharing everything today. It's been a real pleasure. And until next time.
Okay. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Builders Podcast. One more quick note about our sponsors. At Unified Web Design, we're passionate about doing better together, partnering with agencies and businesses to deliver exceptional web design, development, and ongoing support. And Unified Plugins offers tools to take your WordPress projects to the next level, helping you build beautiful websites, enhance functionality, and drive more conversions. If you haven't already, subscribe or follow to stay updated on future episodes. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, sharing it with somebody who might benefit helps us grow this amazing community. Until next time, keep building with intention and creativity.